right now, if we converted 60% of the indicated and inferred resources, that's about a 14-year mine life.
This is Jay Martin.
Colin, it's great to have you in here. I'm looking forward to this.
Jay, it's a pleasure.
So it's been fun chatting with you before we hit record here, and there's a handful of different directions that I want to go. We're looking at the copper sector right now. We're following all of these sort of trade war trends, export restrictions, import taxes, all this new trade aggression that's kind of changing the raw materials landscape, because this all immediately impacts us in a variety of different ways. What's your read right now? Let's start here. I think there's a bit of urgency coming from our policymakers to retain control over things that used to be certain and suddenly aren't, right? The era that I grew up in, globalization, if you had the cash or credit, you could buy whatever you wanted from wherever it was. Maybe that game's over now. Do you believe that's the case? And how are you processing and adjusting?
I think the story's unwritten. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty into exactly how this all unfolds, but I do know that you still fundamentally have to get the material from somewhere, and you have to get it to market. And the market tends to win out, I think, in the end. It tends to look for efficiencies. It tends to look for the path of least resistance from, let's say, a mine, as an example, to the terminal market. I mean, tariffs are a challenge, right? And I think, but it's more the positioning of the tariffs and how they're being used. I don't know if it's really fundamentally going to change the industry. All I see right now is sort of the price increases, probably maybe above where they should be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think at the end of the day, I'm still very comfortable that those of us who do the business of extracting the metals well will get rewarded well in the go-forward market, because the macro is really positive. I mean, the supply demand is very positive for the copper. Many other the base commodities and the bulk commodities as well. I don't think that changes. So I think we just have to be prepared for a lot of volatility between now and probably for a while going forward. But the fundamental transactional nature of producing copper and selling it, I don't think actually changes.
That doesn't shift. If you can create the cost-effective products, it will find a market, no question.
And again, I think you also have to be mindful. There's some really expert people out there who understand transportation, they understand warehousing, they understand the markets. Sometimes it's the smelters, sometimes it's groups like the traders, et cetera. I mean, they're very incentivized to make this work. And many of them have seen sort of market disruptions in the past, and some of them are pretty well prepared for it, or at least they have it in the experience. So they're prepared to deal with some of these issues. I don't know how well it's happened in the last 6 to 9 to 12 months, because some of the changes have been pretty abrupt. Mm-hmm. So I think there has been a little bit of panic at times. How do I get metal from warehouse 1 to warehouse 2 before everything comes apart?
Yep.
I mean, having, vessel operators holding their vessels in a port waiting for, it either to open or to close. There's a big cost to that, but people are prepared for it. So I think our job is to make sure we have those relationships and we're having good conversations with those folks, so that when we do come back into production, we're ready for it.
Yeah. Now, on that theme that, product takes the path of least resistance to make it to market. And in the same thread, market will look towards the path of least resistance to acquire product, right? So jurisdiction matters in a way that it maybe hasn't in the previous commodity bull markets, right? And so proximity to one of the two powers of influence, being, I guess, United States or China, matters in a way that it didn't. Would you agree with that? And this is different.
It is a little bit different. I think the real challenge in the end, though, at least when it comes to copper, is, the Chinese and the Asian western rim of the Pacific, that's where the smelting capacity actually is. Yeah. So there's not really that much custom smelting capacity in the continental US or in the lower 48. So takes a long time to build a smelter. It's a long time to build that capacity. I think for our project anyways, the fact that you reference sort of the region or, safe jurisdiction, if that's the phrase, I think that's important, but also just access to tidewater, get the product out into the market, and then and let them, sort of compete for it. Because one of the advantages that we have, and we'll probably get into this in a little bit later, this is a very, very high quality concentrate that will be produced from this asset. And that gives you a lot more options.
Yes.
It allows you to sort of deal with some of those pathway challenges a bit differently because people want it.
You have a bit more leverage.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. One follow-up question on this, and then I want to move into your project in the Yukon and what you guys are doing there. But we talked about kind of the concept of state creep, governments recognizing there's a higher sense of urgency to secure the things they need, mainly critical metals. And we're seeing more government intervention into private business, or at least I feel like we're seeing that. And this isn't necessarily new practice in the East, but it is newer in the West. But the string of deals we've seen in the last few months is getting pretty long, right? Whether it's 10% stake in Trilogy Metals or Lithium Americas, MP Materials. There's two things to consider about this. Number one, there's a new investor at the table who has deep pockets. And number two, they have the ability to adjust policy. I mean, the Trilogy Metals deal was interesting because they wrote a check for $35 million, but it was more interesting because they then coordinated all the permitting necessary to get the Ambler Road built, which was the real barrier. You know what I mean? And so there's this activist shareholder now in the game. And as distasteful as I may find the government in my business, it's happening, whether I like it or not. And if there's a silver lining here, this might be bullish for commodities because projects that are in those favorable jurisdictions, favorable to the regional hegemon that wants them, well, that hegemon's now willing to move whatever is required to make sure that product does get to their market, right?
Yeah, it's always dangerous to try to pick winners and losers, particularly when that's not your business.
Yes.
So the government, I think, has to be a little bit cautious about this. It's happened in the past. And, there is a desire to assist industry, and that's good. But in my view, it should be policy driven first, and then maybe pick winners, losers second. Now, having said that, there's lots of things that different groups, like whether it's a road and maybe even helping construct the road, because maybe there's multiple users, et cetera, et cetera. That, I think, is not a bad way to go. They're going to choose whether or not they want to actually invest and invest in the equity of that group. Yeah, I'm cautious about that. I think it's okay, but I think it's really important that we run our business well first. We shouldn't rely upon the government to sort of bolster our business plan that way. I think we have to be very conscious that we're a steward of capital. We got to do it well. We got to do it cost effectively. We shouldn't sort of rely on Big Brother, if that's the right phrase.
100%.
And, again, I think groups that have received it, good on them. I mean, do what you need to do. Get the thing moving, move it in the right direction. I would just rather see really good, coherent permitting, as an example, or policy that can move things forward, because we're well-intentioned, right? We want to preserve the environment. We want to work with communities well. We want the right things to happen. Mm-hmm. So you could maybe just help us a little bit out, make the permitting process very clear, make the timelines very clear.
Agreed.
And commit to them. And then we can commit resources and we can work through that in the way that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather see that, in all honesty. Put the money there.
Yeah.
Resource the regulator, resource the people so they can actually do their job.
100%.
Yeah, and then we'll respond, right?
Yeah.
And celebrate it, because I think what you'll see is I think you'll actually see projects get done.
That's the best support a government could offer a business, is to clear the obstacles out of the way.
Yeah, and be available for conversations if things go awry, right? Because none of this happens easily, right? It takes a long time to do this, and you need deep conversations, you need thoughtful conversations, and every now and then they go off the rails a little bit. Yeah. Just be available to help the conversation. Maybe assume first that we're well-intentioned, as opposed to...
well-intentioned and competent.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I've had great conversations all through, the Americas, Africa, Australia, different places I've worked in the past. I find that governments are actually really willing to help when you reach out to them and explain what you're trying to do. Not when you're asking favors, but when you say, here's our plan, this is what we're trying to do, this is where we're trying to get to. Can you give us any ideas or thoughts about how we could do it better? Who should we be talking to? And you're not looking for a secret sauce or a particular formula. You're just trying to bring them into the conversation early enough so that you can get the right information, you can do the right work, etc. As opposed to lobbing a permit in and going, hey, is this good?
Yeah.
Like, do it up front.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm with you there. And it's, it's a trend I'm seeing. And I try to find the silver lining in anything, but it makes me inherently nervous because it sets precedent. And once you start picking winners, it's hard to stop. And the stick they wield is very powerful. So in a sense, it's like, maybe we're going to watch somebody try to land an airplane, but they're going to use a sledgehammer to do it, and it's like, we don't know what the results here might be. But back to you. So how long were you at Teck Resources prior to this new endeavor we're going to talk about here?
Yeah, great question. So I started with Cominco Limited. That was the first company, at least after graduating from university, I started with. And that was, part of the Teck family of companies, I guess, in the end. And they merged in the early sort of 2000s. So I started in 91 in Flin Flon, Manitoba as a geologist, sort of working base metals and pretty much you name it, diamonds, nickel, etc. So it was 33 years with Teck.
Yes.
In a whole variety of capacities. When I look back on it, I was extremely lucky.
Why?
I just had some really exceptional people working around me and helping me understand the sort of complexities, not just of the geoscience side, which is where I started, but also just the space in general. Many of the mentors that I had, and the names keep flooding back, right? It's kind of hard to keep them at bay, but they all helped me also understand other people in the business and understand where they were coming from. And then the organization itself, it was an entrepreneurial organization, very entrepreneurial at its core, and it let me do a lot of that. So I've done a lot of strange things that don't make a lot of sense inside a mining company. Okay. But I learned a lot from it, and I was given a lot of liberties, I guess is the right phrase, to go do it.
Is that rare at a major mining company to have that kind of culture?
Yeah, it like anything, there's waves, right? Every organization has its moments. Leadership sets the tone, generally speaking, and then they'll often let groups do it. But I think, in my experience over at least the last 15 years, it's become far harder to be entrepreneurial within a big organization. And I think it's just the nature of the beast. Some are doing it okay, but not many. And I've tried to understand why that's the case, but I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, right away, my response might have been, well, the last 15 years, money's been harder to get at, margins have been tighter, companies have had to be more cautious and less willing to take risk, maybe. I don't know but there's probably a bigger cultural corporate shift at play as well.
There's just many more eyes on it. And it's not eyes looking at it in the sense, are they going to do something wrong or right? It's just like everybody's looking at stuff and everybody's the whole world's in the gotcha moment. Hey, I gotcha, you know? And I think that's made corporate managers nervous. So when I sort of came into the industry, as an example, first sort of drill programs, it was me. It was me. I was a young guy who was working up in northern Manitoba. There was just sort of a guideline that said, hey, you're going to go drill 27 holes and you're going to do this and good luck. We'll talk to you in 6 months. Do it safely, do it properly, think about the environment, do all that sort of stuff. But no one was watching you. No one was helping you. You were literally by yourself. And that's okay. But you were sort of trained to think about the risk. You were trained to make sure that you did it well. And quite honestly, if you didn't, you just didn't survive. Whereas now, people are giving daily drill reports as an example. You've already planned the program. Why do you need a daily drill report? I get it. Do a daily drill report, but you don't need to be in the person's face. They're doing the job. They're professional, etc. Let them do that. And so I just think the world's changed. It's just a little bit more overbearing.
Okay.
than I would like to see.
Yeah, no doubt. Now I have to ask is, because it's a bit of would you call it a shift or a pivot? You're with one of the largest mining companies in the world for over 30 years. And now, I couldn't call Selkirk Copper a startup, right? But it's an earlier stage opportunity, right? Yeah. And you are in the midst of a restart, right? Trying to get a mine restarted. Yeah. Okay, great. Perfect. Yeah. So walk me through the psychology of your decision there. What made you make this leap, and what about this opportunity incentivized you to take this step?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, when you have a career the length I did and the support that I had with Teck, leaving the organization was actually hard. It wasn't a straightforward set of decisions.
Of course.
But, it comes with time, and you do make the decisions, not just for the organization, because that's kind of where my heart was. And it's kind of where my heart still is, right? You wish them all the success in the world. But you step back and, I had to sort of make a pretty clear break, clear the brain, etc. But, it wasn't long after I left where obviously the passion for the industry doesn't go away. And sort of the thinking about what the things that made me get up in the morning, etc., were really important. And they started to clarify a little bit more. And, my wife, my family and friends helped, but many colleagues too sort of reached out and said, hey, Colin, take some time, but let us know when you're ready because we'd love to have you back in the industry. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. And, quite honestly, the things that I was sort of looking for are here with Selkirk Copper. It's where people care about the outcome. That became very clear. Where they were willing to put their own sort of shoulder in behind it, work as a team, but also I could see it coming out of the ground. A big part of my career was to travel around the world, look at opportunities and see maybe what other people couldn't see. Or at least, and then communicate it like clearly. Why is it different? Because everybody looks at these things the same, right? Everyone comes at them similar sort of way. But what I saw here was I could see a pathway to production. I could see a pathway to a restart. But I could also see that it would make a big difference to the community, to the Yukon. If you get this right, this is a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's also just sort of the team members were really cool.
Okay.
Really interesting people, right? And they were all taking risk and they were all sort of looking for a little bit of support and some leadership and seemed like it would be a good thing to do.
So, copper macro aside, and I'd love to touch on that too. For somebody who's putting fresh eyes on Selkirk Copper right now, they don't know anything about the Minto Mine, the history, that you're in the central Yukon. Introduce it, for a first time for me.
Well, it's a historic producing asset, and it's located probably in the best part of the Yukon, in the sense that it's where infrastructure already exists. So there's roads, there's already a power line to the project, there's access, there's a big existing camp facility and whatnot that supported the mining operations up till about 2023 when it went into sort of closure or insolvency. It's a good asset, but it's also poorly understood. It's underloved, underappreciated probably from 2013. Even though it was operated well, there was a lot of strategic things that previous owners made decisions about. And right now, our job is just to sort of embrace the asset for what it is, describe it as best we can. But in my view, it's a mid-tier producer of a very high quality copper concentrate with gold and silver credits that's now completely financially unencumbered. Mm-hmm. It's the first time the asset can speak for itself. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make sure that we can maximize the value of the ore in the ground, get it out in a cost efficient way with a plan, and see sort of towards a 15-year mine life. That's what we're trying to get to.
Towards a 15-year mine life, yeah. Okay.
Which would be the longest that it's been. We need to, discover some additional ore or define it better into a mine plan, but the bones are there. Like it's all sort of there, and it's just going to take a little bit of time to get there, but not too long.
So the question I have to ask, obviously, is 2 previous operators have failed at this property. Is that a fair statement to make?
I don't think that's entirely fair.
Okay,
I think it was brought into production by a group called Sherwood Copper, that quickly became Capstone through a series of corporate transactions.
Right.
And it grew very quickly from about a 1,100 ton per day sort of mill to the current 4,100. So between 2007 and 2011, it grew very quickly to a modest size. And Capstone actually ran it quite well, I would say. But, in 2013, they had other opportunities, bigger fish to fry elsewhere, and they used it as a vehicle to get there. Yeah. But they didn't do anything poor for the asset, but it just became non-core. So they stopped investing in some of the things that you need to do, right? Like drilling, et cetera, replacing reserves, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then by 2018, it became clear that it was probably getting close to the end of its life, and they decided to sell it. And they did an okay job there, like everybody does. You do your best. And the incoming party, I would say, did fail at operating it. Okay. It's because they rushed into it. They really thought it was something that maybe it wasn't. And they underappreciated the lack of drilling, I think. And then also they probably underappreciated the permitting restraints that were on the asset at the time. And in the end, they couldn't feed the mill. They ran out of money. Yeah. So they did fail to operate it well. But what they did do and it was the first group to do it in many years, they actually recognized they did ultimately have to replace some of the resources. So they drilled about 82,000 meters of core between 2021 and 2022. And that's been a boon to us as we come into it, because that's never been described before. It's now completely updated in a new mineral resource estimate.
Okay.
And in addition to that, they discovered several new zones that were previously unknown. So it's a great platform to start. So they at least did that part well. Didn't operate it that well.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that history and clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Which also provided you guys, your team, the opportunity to buy this thing for what seems like kind of pennies on the dollar. Like, walk me through the transaction.
Yeah. So I wasn't part of the whole receivership process, but I've learned a lot about it over the last few months. I mean, essentially, the mine went into government control and was shut down for a number of reasons. And then ultimately went into a bankruptcy process. And it took about 2 years. So it was initially supposed to be about a year-long process, but it took much longer than it should have. And again, for a variety of reasons. But the most interesting part of the story is the Selkirk First Nation. So the Selkirk First Nation is the hereditary landowner and the actual landowner for the lands under which this asset sits.
Yes.
And they control all the surrounding lands as well. And they've been part of the asset from the early days. So exploration really started here in 1971. And lots of different folks have tried to find the ore, et cetera. And lots of relationships, some good and some maybe not so good. But the First Nation has been through that whole thing. So think about that. That's almost 70 years, or not 70, sorry, 60 years.
Yeah.
And including through the production phase. And everything always starts out rosy, and we're going to do the right relationships and it's going to work this way, et cetera. And they just were disappointed in the end, particularly with the last operator.
Okay.
And so they sort of stepped back and they said strategically, if there's more ore here, and if the asset's still worth operating, maybe instead of us just having a royalty, maybe we should actually be part of this story. Maybe we should get into the driver's seat. And the phrase they used with me several times, instead of sitting in the back of the truck or in the bed of the truck, let's get into this. Let's get into the cab. Let's get into the front seat. Another way they've said it is, we don't want to be behind the wall from corporate or management decisions. We want to be on the other side of the wall. Yep. We want to be in those conversations. So they're the ones who actually took the risk. They acquired it 100% on their own basis,
right,
with their own funds. And then, in my view, very smartly, they partnered with the Fiore Group, or the group that's sort of this incubator company, the Frank Schuster group of companies, and said, we're not mine operators, we're not geologists, but we've seen it. We understand water, air, environment, and permitting. Let's work with a group that can maybe look at this asset with a fresh set of eyes. Yet we will now be part of the management and the ownership structure. So they're the ones who deserve the credit. Okay. And you're right, they acquired it at cents on the dollar. There's been over $300 million invested in this mine in terms of facilities, above ground equipment, the mill, the road, the power line, all the sort of gear that you need.
Yes.
And they acquired it for $6.4 million.
$6.4 million, over $300 million invested, including all that infrastructure.
Yeah. And that's all functional. It all works. Sorry.
Yeah, still got that new mill smell.
Well, a little bit. We're going to have to clean it up a little bit.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. The reason I make that joke actually is because I do see some parallels between Selkirk Copper and the West Red Lake gold story, right?
Yeah.
To a degree. I mean, there's 100%. Some similarities there, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the advantage there is that you've got a group within the Fiore office, not at Selkirk, but adjacent to you guys, that went through a similar process a few years before you, right? And so the lessons you can pull from their journey is like invaluable, I imagine.
It is. And it's also the people relationships too. So it's one thing to see it written down, hey, this is what we did, et cetera. It's an entirely different thing to have, Shane Williams exactly sit down and say, hey, this is what we did at West Red Lake. These are the things I would have done differently. I think we're all sort of a bit better when it's tangible and you can sort of touch the commentary. Yeah. So it is important. And, I think the most important thing was don't be in a rush. Raise enough capital, be well capitalized at the outset, give yourself time to actually get a plan together. So as I said, this is an unloved and underappreciated asset. What we're trying to do here is, essentially put some love back in the asset, but give it time. And I've told lots of people, they said, well, what are you doing? What's happening right now today? And I said, well, we're making a plan. We're planning to make a plan.
Okay.
And I know that sounds sort of weird, but right now we've got engineers looking at the asset. We've got geoscientists all over it. We're drilling, et cetera. We're looking at the environment, the water, et cetera. And that's going to inform, for the first time, new mining plans. And that's kind of what we need. So it really is, we're in the planning phase to make a plan to go and execute a restart.
Yeah.
And it's pretty exciting. The stuff we're learning is pretty good. Like, nothing has surprised me so far in what I've seen on the ground. There's things that we have to work through, but I think that would be the West Red Lake story as well. Acquire it at a discount, capitalize it as best you can, and then move into the execution phase.
Yeah.
I think we're just benefiting from their experience.
And I agree. It's funny to say you're planning to make a plan, but you're measuring twice before you cut once. And it's like the most common mistake at almost any stage of resource company, from exploration to development and near production, is that things get rushed, right? Whether that's a consequence of pressure from the shareholders, urgency on behalf of management, but whether it's, you can rush into a drill program before you fully understand where you should poke those holes because you want to get news flow out. And we've seen many companies rush into production and then stumble at the final yard line there. And so there's moments where you want to be aggressive and move quickly. And they're usually after extraordinary seasons of patience and planning, right?
That's right.
And then you can go for it, right?
But I'm going to use, it's not a new phrase, but measure twice, cut once sort of thing. I think that's exactly right. And particularly when everybody's new, the team's new.
Yeah.
We started up a drill program just recently. We've got 4 drills turning on the asset, which is pretty quick. But I don't want the phone call. So safety, number one, right? Yeah. Let's start the first drill. Let's get the thing figured out. Make sure that you're managing the water well. It's important for the First Nation. It's important to me. Make sure that the cuttings are done well, that the drill crews are paying attention, and that they also know that they can say, stop, it's not good right now. We're setting things up. So that's a really important part of it too, is just to make sure everyone knows we aren't in that much of a rush. At the end of the day, we will, get in a rush soon. But right now, it's 2 steps forward.
Yep, I'm with you. Okay. So walk me through the asset, right? You mentioned the updated mineral resource estimate post Minto Minerals, right? So what are we looking at here?
So it's about at least in terms of the resource, and by the way, this is copper, gold, silver.
Yes.
About sort of 65-35% in terms of the value in the ore. Okay. 65% copper, 35% gold, silver.
Precious, yeah. All right.
And of course, that depends on precious metal prices a little bit.
Yeah, that's dollar values.
As they move.
Got it.
We've got about 48 or 50% more mineral in the ground than in 2021, when the last operator just started that drill program.
Okay.
So that mineral resource update's been pretty significant. It's all still inferred and indicated resources, so it's not yet in a mine plan. It's not measured.
Yeah.
But on a combined basis, it's about 36 million tons. And the grade is between sort of 1.1 and 1.5% copper, with about 0.5 gram per ton gold and 4 grams silver. That's kind of the global average. We got about 900 million pounds of copper in the ground. We got about 500,000 ounces of gold and about 2.8 million ounces of silver in the indicated and inferred category.
Right.
So the asset itself has been operated in the past as both underground and open pit. That would be our plan going forward as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but the main thing, what we're trying to do is, as we develop those plans, is that we feed the mill consistently with ore from the underground and the open pit. One of the challenges with this asset historically, including even in the capstone days in the latter part, was just consistent feed to the mill. So we just got to make sure that we've got enough producing faces, that they deliver the material in a methodical sort of way. Mm-hmm. I've always said to folks, small mines are harder to operate than big mines.
Oh, yeah?
Because they're less forgiving.
Okay.
Yeah. Smaller mines, you've really got to have, your planning has to be really, really good. Yep. You have to have high confidence, not just in the ore, but your ability to deliver it to the mill. Don't touch it too many times. Hopefully you can get it directly in the mill and then away you go. But if you miss a few days of production for whatever reason, in a small mine, it's hard to catch up. It's a little easier in a bigger mine.
Got it.
Yeah. So we just have to make sure that works well. But everything that I've seen to date, that resource, it's there. It's a pretty quality resource. It's all lensoid sort of bodies. They tend to be about 400 meters long, about 100 to 150 meters wide, and 30 meters thick, but very good grade. We have some sections, where 10 meters of 8 to 10% copper.
Okay.
And that would be within a shell of about 1 to 1.5% copper. So there's some very, very dense metal here.
Yeah.
And our objective here is just to make sure that that's well defined in mine plans so that we can sequence it through the mill as best we can.
Okay.
And the initial drilling so far, we're probably about 13,000 meters into a 50,000 meter drill program.
Okay.
And so far so good. The targets are basically behaving. We don't have any assays yet, but we've got the visual logs.
And is the intention of this drill program, you're about 20% of the way through it, to upgrade the existing resource into a higher confidence category and or step out and see?
It's threefold.
Yeah.
So I would say first, it's sort of a little modest step outs and step asides to enhance our understanding of the zones, but also increase the metal in it. And then there are certain portions where we are doing infill drilling.
Okay.
As with anything, you sort of have to learn your way back into the ore body. So a big part of what we're doing now is applying very fundamental geoscience techniques. Our VP of exploration, lady by the name of Stacey Jones, she's really good at this. She's preparing the team for this. It's really exciting, actually, because this is probably the first time people have really looked at the geology in a while. It was really a mine that was operated basically on grade shells. And that's okay, but we need to do it a little bit differently going forward. So it's coming, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to have a couple stages of drilling, because as we go through this first stage, that will get us the first mine plans in trade-off studies, we're calling them, which will probably lead to a PEA, and then we'll start a feasibility study mid-2026.
Mid-2026. Yeah. En route to the restart.
And we'll use both the PEA and the feasibility study to inform that restart.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of things that happen, but the three things that we're basically doing is drilling, and then the trade-off studies, which is largely mine planning, but also we'll look at the mill, make sure it's functional, ready to go, etc. Waste and tailings placement. It's a big part of that study work. And then the last thing is permitting. What I would really like to see here, and again, this is early days, we need a fully integrated, coherent set of permits that allow us to see that 15-year mine life. And I think in the past, what's happened with this asset is probably more like 3 and 5 year permitting windows. And then you go through another phase of permitting and you do it again, What I would really like to see is not that. We want enough stability in the permit that allows us to operate for a period of time. Obviously, we'll get all the sort of development and construction permits, what I would call sort of the sectoral permits underneath the broader environmental permit. But we need confidence that we can go and get that 15-year mine life and operate well.
What is the barrier to that? Why is it more common that you see a company end up with a 3 to 5 year permit? What's the obstacle to getting the longer full term?
Just an openness in the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you need to, in fairness to the regulator and government, before we submit a permit, we kind of have to let them know where we're going. We have to let them know what the information base is that we have, the areas where we're most confident, and the areas that we need to add to, and that will inform the permit. But they need to kind of be prepared for that too. It's no fun when we sort of lob something across the desk and say, surprise.
Yes.
And again, I don't think everybody does that, but I think it happens more than we realize, right? And then they also have to resource what we're asking. They have to be prepared. Let's say it's water heavy, or let's say it's geotechnical heavy, or let's say it's, boundary conditions are limiting. They need to know so that they can be prepared to have the right review team there available so that they can hit their timelines, et cetera. So I do think that's part of it. But the other one is just vision. Like sometimes you have to just sort of get out and say, we're trying to get to 15 years.
Yeah.
And, right now, if we converted 60% of the indicated and inferred resources, which I think we can do, that's about a 14-year mine life.
If you convert that to measured, right? That's about a 14-year existing resource.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've got the bones.
Yes.
Again, someone will tell me I'm being too optimistic that that's going to happen, and someone else will say I'm being too conservative.
Yep.
But it's not unreasonable. So let's be reasonable, get a reasonable view out there. Let's share the view, make sure the Selkirk First Nation understand it, make sure that the regulator and the industry understands it, but also our investors.
And Selkirk First Nations is your largest shareholder,
Yeah.
largest shareholder of the company.
It's super exciting. Like, I got to tell you, I just came back from site on the weekend. I was able to attend their annual general assembly. And this was part of the conversation because it's a very democratic group. It's very active democratic process. It's pretty neat to see. And, you know, they want to see this successful. They're effectively 22.3% owner in Selkirk Copper going forward.
Great. Yeah.
It's the first majority Indigenous owned mining company in Canada. And they have high hopes. They want it done well. They want best in class. They want environment, but they also want an asset that makes sense for them.
Now, let me ask you, because that permitting conversation, after you explain it to me, seems to really come down to relationship management, right? Do I trust what you're saying? Are you the kind of person that does what you say you're going to do?
That's right.
Coming to the table with a stakeholder like the Selkirk First Nations, not as a royalty interest, but as your actually largest shareholder, does this strengthen that conversation for Selkirk?
Oh, I think it does.
Significantly.
And I think it also sort of challenges us a little bit in a way, right? Like, you don't assume anything.
Yeah.
Don't assume that you're aligned necessarily with the First Nation. Go find out. Go and check it out, right? One of the phrases I've used with the team here is boots on the ground. Again, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm a geologist. I love the environment. I love the nature. I love being out on the ground. But I also understand that to some of us, the rocks tell stories. Our job is to go figure out that story, but it's also to figure out the environment story at the same time, figure out the community story at the same time, pull it all together. You can't do that from Vancouver. Like, you just can't, right? You got to go. You got to spend time, build those relationships. But I think the other thing that might not be as obvious in the Selkirk First Nation, they are expert at permitting. They have been in front of the regulator around their insistence for high quality water, high quality management of the environment in a way that you and I want to hear about, that quite honestly, everybody wants to hear about. They're good at it. They're good. They have those relationships better than I do. And so we're not going to necessarily take that at face value. We still have to work with it. They still have to manage their affairs as the landowner. But the reality is they can at least lend their experience to what we're trying to do. And our objective is actually to bring them into the management team. I want them as part of the executive team. I want them around the table, hearing about what the team is talking about and validating it through their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's exciting. Like, I got to tell you, it's really neat because they're just passionate about this. They want it to be successful because it hasn't been as successful as it could have been for them.
Yeah. And incentive structures matter.
Oh yeah.
Fully.
I think we mentioned briefly at the start before we started filming. I mean, the capital markets aren't perfect, but they align people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but you still have to have those values and mission statement clear. I think we have those in a formative stage at the moment, but we're going to work through those over the next while with the First Nation. When you're in their community, like, there's so many symbols about what they value. There's so many symbols about what they desire to see happen with their kids and their families, but the land around them. It's actually pretty inspiring. We just have to tap into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the path to mid-tier production, right? Mid 2026, I think you said PFS is the plan?
FS will start the feasibility.
FS.
Yeah, it's because of the history on the asset here. We probably don't need to go through a PFS the same way because the mill building's constructed.
Yes, those are sunk costs.
Yeah, so it's all there. It's designed. It's functional. Our job is really to make sure it works. So we'll do a lot of test work, et cetera, to just make sure that when you turn on the power, the mill turns the way that you expect it to, et cetera.
Right.
But those are pretty straightforward things. I think the biggest part of this trade-off study and then the PEA, which is the feed for the feasibility study, we're going to be looking at waste rock and tailings, et cetera, but they're high-level options. And then the feasibility study will define that. And my hope is that it will take somewhere between 9 and 12 months to get that feasibility study done.
Okay.
And then we'll make the investment decision on the backs of that. But we do have commitments to the First Nation and to the government. We need to communicate some line of sight on the restart decision by the end of 2026.
Okay.
So that's where we're going to try to get to as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
but it needs to work, including how we finance it. So,
are mid-tier copper producers more attractive today than they ever have been because we're now like the copper deficit's on our doorstep? You know, when it's 10 years into the future, people don't think about it.
That's
We
right.
talk about it, but no one considers it seriously. It's kind of like how royalty companies never get valued for their future cash flow.
That's right.
It's like, what are you today? And the CEO can go, well, look at our 2-year forecast. And the market says, we don't care till it's 6 months out. And then we care, right?
if not 6 months after the
Yeah,
but
exactly.
sorry.
Right. And I kind of feel like that's how the copper sector's rolling out here. We've known about this deficit for years. You know, just recently, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs adjusted not their 2030 forecast, their 2026 forecast, you know, where we are this time of year in Indonesia. The Grasberg mine just shut down. That's second biggest copper mine in the world, right? So everyone's responding to this.
But by value, it's probably the biggest.
By value, it's probably the biggest.
I think so.
Yeah. And given the state of the copper market, it's very vulnerable to fractures like that. Those have massive ripple effects, you know, which we're witnessing in these price forecasts. Because it takes so long to find, develop, and build and finance a major copper producer, my assumption is we're going to see a lot more appetite for mid-tiers. Do you think that's correct?
I do. But I also think mid-tiers are becoming better stewards of capital as well than the majors, in my view. I think, you know, their sources of financing and sort of the robustness of their overall business, they really have to pay more attention to capital allocation.
They have to.
They have to.
Yes.
So I think from an investor perspective, that's good. Anyone who has to pay more attention to capital, that's a good thing.
100%.
Because our industry hasn't maybe been the best, you know, over time at doing that. We tend to get a bit over exuberant at times, or even worse, in the downturns, we tend to underinvest. So I think and copper too, the mid-tiers, there aren't a lot of them.
No.
Right? So they're a bit of a rare beast, and they're good at what they do, generally speaking. And, you know, like this could be a really, really profitable mine. It was profitable for Capstone in its early days. It actually helped launch the Capstone company. It helped them finance their way into much bigger opportunities, et cetera. But run well, a mid-sized mine actually can make a lot of money.
So let me ask you, this was a property that helped launch Capstone into their current business model and elevate them to a higher operation. And I consider the fact that Selkirk Mining is within the Fiore group of companies. And I know how this group thinks about scale, right? Can you share anything on the bigger vision for Selkirk Copper? Because when I saw this transaction, I thought, if I were to guess, this will be the first transaction of more, right? And timing, like, look, unless you got something you want to tell me right now, but like, what can you share on the big vision?
I'm just trying to get the current deals done.
Yeah. All right. What about that? What about that can you share in the big vision? And maybe it's as simple as like, get this mission done, and then we'll worry about what's next.
Well, I mean, that part's always important, right? Tend to your knitting, get the first thing done, like get it done well. Because if you get it done well, that's a platform for other things, right? You create a sense of confidence that the team can actually do what we say. But having said that, I think there's two things that are really exciting to me about this asset. So again, being a geologist early in my career, you're always thinking about the full size of the prize or the geologic potential of the belt, et cetera, et cetera. And so in this one, you know, the history of this asset is it's basically defined and identified its resources within a 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer postage stamp, within a district that's about 40 kilometers, maybe 60 kilometers long, and 10 to 15 kilometers wide. Aside from one other center further to the south, there's almost been no modern exploration on any of that surrounding lands, to the north, to the south, or to the east, because it's been controlled by the First Nation, and they haven't been comfortable working with all of the parties to open up those lands. They're called Category A lands. And there's just been no modern exploration on them. Geology doesn't work that way. Geology doesn't, you know, just stop at the claim boundary, right?
Yeah.
So we already know that there's extensions of favorable geology. We know that there's extensions of favorable target, like geophysical anomalies, geochemical anomalies that have never been tested. So our hope here is what we do is we first get the first thing done, but we use that as a platform to grow that opportunity just in the district. And that has two things that it can do. One is it can set you up for success in terms of longevity. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a longer than a 15-year mine life. But it also introduces into the conversation, maybe there's a modest expansion.
Yes.
Maybe there's something that you could do cost effectively. So you're not spending, $30,000 per annual ton to get a ton of copper out, right? That's kind of the industry average the last 5 years.
Okay.
What we're looking at here with the restart, with the benefit of all the capitals that's been spent, we could be looking at sort of 7,500. That's a 15% of the industry run rate.
Right.
It's a big deal, right? So, but that could feed into that broader growth story. And then, who knows what goes after that. I think this is going to be a pretty evolving conversation with the First Nation as to what their aspirations are. But they've been absolutely clear. They want best-in-class operations. They want a future, and they're willing to go and get it. Yeah. So, and that could mean a lot of things. I do think there's a real growth story here. And the first part is the exploration upside. It's real. It's evident. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the exploration team, but that's part of life.
But that's their job.
That's their job. Yeah. Right. Go figure it out. And it's also my job to help them figure it out, right? Whether it's relationships that I have or my love for the geology too, right? I've been up there, I think 6 times in the last 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes meeting with the community, sometimes meeting with, government officials, meeting with suppliers, but always trying to go to the asset and to go to the community first. But I've fortunately been able to see the core coming out of the ground, and it's good. It's confusing.
Okay.
In the sense that it doesn't fit together with a perfect geologic model, right? Like everybody talks about, this is the model and this is what it means, etc. This one doesn't kind of fit nicely into that jigsaw puzzle. So we're learning about it, but there's no doubt the copper's there. And it's coming along. Yeah.
What's the timing on the next resource update? Yeah.
So we'll probably be able to get a resource update out in early Q2, I think. So we're going through this drill program right now. We'll have about 34,000 meters drilled before the Christmas break. And then there's an ice road that needs to be built across the Yukon River that we rely upon for supplies and whatnot. That takes about 6 weeks. So probably the end of January, we'll continue the program, complete it.
Yes.
And then the assays feed in. And right now, I think our first samples went into the lab probably about 5 weeks ago. And we got another couple weeks before we get the first set of assays out. But that's the lag time. So I'm hoping sort of early to mid Q2, we'll have a mineral resource update, and that will inform these updated mine plans. We'll try to do it as best we can concurrently, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. That's a good catalyst to look forward to, and I think a good milestone that shareholders and prospective investors can focus on. And then always, just because people are going to ask, but what else? Like, what's next? If you think along the way, Q2 for some people is an infinity of time.
So ages.
So what can we expect from you in terms of news flow in the near term, Colin?
So I think what I've laid out for the team is I think we have 17 potential news items between now and the end of April.
Okay.
And there's a variety of them because it's a big drill program in all fairness. So there's a variety of things that happen with that. We'll get as quickly as we can. We'll get sort of staged results and early interpretations and assays on sort of 5 main zones within the property that we're drilling. So that'll come out, not in dribs and drabs, but we'll try to make it regular, not too much of a surprise, but some regular news flow. And I think there's sort of 4 stages that I can anticipate there, just so people can see it, hear it, and then feel how it gets incorporated into the mineral resource update. Yeah. So that's one set of newses. The other one is obviously we're starting these trade-off studies. So it's really important that we get the best engineers, the best technical people working for us. So we've already gone out to bid. We're in the process of finalizing the award of those contracts to 2 sort of brand name engineering firms and consultants. That's important for a variety of reasons. One, they want to work on this kind of asset. It's great when you've got those top tier sort of groups wanting to help you because it's exciting, right? And there's some invested interests, and some of these groups have tried to support this team for a long time. They want it to be successful. So we'll be able to communicate that. That helps in sending a message of confidence that the trade-off study will be well done with well-disciplined sort of groups. We're going to get costing and options that make sense. So that's a message track that's important. As I said, we're trying to bring people into the management team that are Selkirk First Nation to support the overall philosophy of what we're doing. but also help us with the permitting and help us with the management of the asset. And then there's a few other things that will happen. We're going to do our best on some of the exploration opportunities in the district. Those are a little less certain, but my guess is we'll get a couple of those across the line. I don't think they're going to be big and splashy, but it'll be directive, right? It'll be saying, okay, yeah, they are thinking about the larger landscape here. Yeah. I'm actually pretty excited. There's a few other things that'll probably happen. There'll probably be some small permitting updates. Like for instance, we're just in the formative stages of the company, but we did get an extension and a brand new sort of exploration permit to allow us to do what we're doing here under the seed company that's started with. That's actually pretty important because not everybody gets permits in a timely way. So we have so far, and I expect to see more of that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I love that. And one thing that I often talk about on my show is in this industry, it's so volatile, so high risk, therefore so important to stick with good people as an investor, right? If you can stick with the same crew, the same team that consistently tends to make you money, like just stay, And, one goal that investors should have in this market as new deals seemingly hit your desk way more often than they were 6 years ago, you should be trying to get to the no as quickly as possible, right? Doesn't mean it's a bad project, but just like, it's not a yes.
Yeah, is this right for me?
If it's not an F yes, it's a no, right? Yeah. Move on. There's a new bus every 15 minutes. But when you find a crew that you enjoy working with and that's made you money in the past, you stick with them. That is what I have found with Fiore Group, right? But the reason I bring that up is because the additional value, I believe, in working in an organization that has 8-9 companies under the umbrella allows you to workshop problems and solutions, borrow other people's brain capital, access other people's capital networks, but you pool all of those resources. And I think most importantly, brain capital. If you're going through some kind of a challenge, you can workshop that in a boardroom with 7 other CEOs.
And very quickly.
I
think you mentioned it on one of your other one of your other interviews.
Yeah.
I think it was with Vizsla Silver.
Okay.
Yeah, and similar sort of thing. I think that and there's numerous groups that have done this in the past. Sometimes corporates do it, right? Yeah. They have those sort of hit teams, if you want to call it, where the ideas flow, et cetera. Yeah. And different corporate groups. Fiore is definitely one of them. And it is a relationship problem solving business, right? So there is power in that for sure. And I think for me, anyways, one of the best things is also the relationships that they have. So I might have 20 relationships, you might have 20.
Yes.
But between the two of us, we have 40.
Yes.
So now we kind of get to pick and choose to some degree, but we also get to see people who lean in. The most important thing about the stuff that I do, in my experience and thing, is like you can chase folks and you can try to incentivize them to come, but you also they have to want to come to work. Yeah. They have to want and to come and put the sweat equity in and really make it successful. So I always try to do that with my teams. I try to make sure that the teams also are true believers to an extent and they're willing to come for the ride. And it's not just about the remuneration or the incentive package. It's about the challenge, right?
Yes.
A-type people are super fun to have around because they like to solve problems.
Agreed. I agree with that. And yes, good call out, because when I had Michael Connert on the show, I talked about that as well, because in venture capital,
that's right.
I've invested with Craig Perry and Michael, done well, trust those guys, not always to win, but to work really hard at trying, right?
And also one of the coolest things I saw in that is the willingness to also recognize that it always is not a straight line. Like they had to work through some difficult capital markets. Yeah. I think you mentioned, he financed part of the team through that. Yeah. The reality is every story has bits of that, right? Including this story. So it's good.
And just like the, junior mining industry, there's way more companies than are worth a look. There's also a lot of these incubator shops. Not all of them are worth a look. And so, I want to add that caveat, because I don't want people walking away saying, oh, as long as I find the incubator group, I'm in safe stewardship. And I'd say absolutely not, actually. But when you find those groups that do offer that, then absolutely. And I think Fiore does. I love what you guys are building. Love the culture at Fiore. Very excited about the future of Selkirk Copper.
Well, I appreciate it.
It's timely, and there's lots going on and lots of tangible value that you can see. Yeah.
But I have to say, you started off the conversation. Why did I come into this opportunity or initiative? Given my background and whatnot, a big part of it is the people. The opportunity is the opportunity. I've known, people within the Fiore Group for a long time, going back to things like raising money for Children's Hospital and mining for miracles, etc.
Yeah.
And you sort of get to know folks at a different level, and that's a good thing, right? And also, there's a team there that's done a lot of different things in a lot of different parts of the world. Some have worked out very well.
Yeah.
Some haven't, but they've learned from it, right? Yeah. And I'm a big fan of this, right? People often say, what's the most important secret of success in this business? It's being a student of the industry. And don't just think about it as rocks and mining and whatnot. It's a really broad, vibrant, diverse industry. You know, understanding anthropology and culture and history, archaeology is almost as important sometimes as the rocks. Understanding the capital markets is obviously important, but same thing, where's the concentrate going? Why is it going there, and why do they want it? It's a fascinating industry, and being a student of it, just wake up every day and there's something new to learn.
I love that.
Yeah, it's fun.
I love that.
It's fun.
Look, Colin, it's been great chatting with you.
I appreciate the opportunity, very much so.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm looking forward as a shareholder to the future here. Love to have you back on, as we move through and closer to some of these catalysts, close to the new year, shortly thereafter, and get an update on how things are going. You've been to site, did you say 6 times in the last 8 weeks?
Might be 7.
Might be 7. So a lot. All right. Good for you. I mean, I love that, right?
Come to site with us.
I'd love to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, be good.
And Yukon, by the way, is, in my experience, one of the most supportive regional governments in Canada in terms of supporting our industry and attracting capital. They're at the investment conferences, promoting the region. I see it.
There's some real excitement there. It's definitely got the endowment. The whole territory, some of the best mineral systems in the world. They've been known a long time. Yeah. The biggest challenge is how do you get them out of the ground efficiently, cost effectively. Okay. I do agree with you. I do think it's a supportive environment. And I think that's also just the nature of the territory. The people that live there are pretty hardy. Yeah. They love the land. They appreciate the land. Yeah. And they're also sort of doers. Yeah. They want to do stuff, right? Yeah. It's a great place to be.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Once again, Colin, I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much.